Hi, welcome back to part 2 of the early Middle Ages. So, we are going to pick up where we left off earlier, the development of European feudalism. And unfortunately, we're not going to watch the video. Between 800 and 1000, invaders threatened Europe from all directions. The most successful invaders, however, were the Vikings from Scandinavia. We have a Fun History Friday presentation coming up on them. So this is a depiction of them coming from Scandinavia and basically invading everywhere. See? All by waterways. Aren't their ships pretty cool? I think so. Now, the Vikings were not known for being merciful people. Yeah, they typically went in, killed, and took whatever they wanted. But the Vikings were looking for more than just loot or treasure. They were also looking for new lands in a better climate. They settled in Britain and in France, bringing with them new cultural ideas. So you can see their expansion. There's also a theory that says the Vikings were the first to discover North and South America. Well, North America, I should be specific. And I'll try to share some great primary sources on that a little bit later. The Viking raids hurried the breakup of Charlemagne's empire. The weakened governments under Charlemagne's grandsons could not respond in time or quick enough to the raids of the Vikings, and so because these larger governments couldn't protect the people from the Vikings, local nobles eventually took over the role of protector, and so feudalism developed. Now, feudalism was a comp topic. However, I don't believe we're going to include feudalism and the Middle Ages on your comps this year, which I know is kind of a bummer, but also a huge relief. I still want you guys to learn this, though, so you still have to do your homework, because this is really important for you to be introduced to feudalism and, the Renaissance period, so that in 8th grade, when we meet again, this isn't like a culture shock for you. All right, back to the slide. As in Japan, Europe's feudal system depended on an exchange of land for loyalty and service. A lord gives a fief, or a gift of land, to a loyal follower. The person who receives the fief is known as a vassal, or a lesser lord. The vassal kneels before his lord and pledges his loyalty. He also agrees to supply knights, or highly trained mounted warriors, to his lord in times of trouble. I would recommend now, if you're taking handwritten notes, pause and copy down this chart. You'll notice it looks quite similar to the Japanese feudal system. The big thing to focus on here is land is going downward, right, in exchange for service and loyalty. So feudalism, the short definition is land for loyalty. I don't know why I hesitated there. Anyways, like the daimyo of Japan, the lord supplied his own army, including knights, and he built his own manor house on his manor, or self-sufficient estate. This manor house could be a simple fortified house, like so. So pretty. Look at this cute little moat here. You've got, look at all these chickens. Just kidding. Or it could be a castle, depending on the situation. Ta-da! Okay, moving on. So in Europe, the king stood at the top of the feudal society. Below the king stood the most powerful nobles and high church officials. So we're talking about cardinals, bishops. They were the lords of their manors. Next in the hierarchy came the knights, or the vassals, followed by peasants. But before we get to peasants, we're going to go into a little bit greater depth on knights. Now, knights swore loyalty to their lord, and they lived by the code of chivalry, which, as Christian warriors, it was a code of behavior calling for courage, honor, and loyalty. This is important, so I would write down the definition of the code of chivalry. A knight would defend his lord's life and property, much like the samurai of Japan. However, there is one big significant difference between a samurai and a knight, besides the obvious. Most knights came from noble families, so training for knighthood began very early, around 7 or 8 years old, and your education started with another noble's family. Now, I know what you're thinking. No, 7-year-olds were not given giant swords. They were given wooden swords and worked their way up. A page was schooled in the use of weapons, how to ride, and behave like a gentleman. Once a young man progressed from the page stage, he would be promoted to a squire, which acted as an assistant to a knight. Finally, he swore loyalty to a lord and became a knight. Now, this is the Crusade Knight. We'll talk about those hopefully next week. At the bottom of this social hierarchy or social structure were peasant farmers. Peasants worked the land for the lords. In return, they could expect protection from attack and strips of freehold land to work for themselves. Now, there was an even lower class below peasants, and they're known as serfs. Serfs were the lowest class of peasants. They were legally bound to the lord's land and could not leave it. Over time, though, it might be possible for them to earn enough money to buy their freedom. Then a serf could possibly own a piece of freehold land. This was very difficult, though. So notice here, peasants, serfs, this is your bed. This might be your kitchen, right? Your stove. You sleep with the animals, all right? There's no separation. Now, Japanese and European feudalism. Both arose in a time of violence and warfare. Both involved an exchange of land for service and loyalty. Both samurai and knights were expected to follow a code of honor. So the samurais followed the Bushido code, and knights of Europe followed the chivalry code. These codes emphasized honor, courage, and loyalty. A European knight's emphasis on doing great deeds for the love of a noble woman, however, was the big difference, okay? It was as foreign of an idea as, let's say, the Japanese interest in Zen Buddhism was to the Europeans. So samurais fought for loyalty and they sought enlightenment, right, through Zen Buddhism, like oneness and basic Buddhist beliefs, right? So following the Four Noble Truths, they devoted their lives to denying self, right, so that they could be relieved from this chaos, whereas the European knights were motivated by love. So sweet. Side by side with feudalism was an economic system called manorialism. The second video that I'll be posting tomorrow is going to be on the difference between feudalism and a manor or manorialism. As was stated before, a manor was a self-sufficient piece of land of a medieval lord. Its center was the manor house, and around it were clustered a village, a church, and fields for growing crops. The peasants grew crops, tended livestock, and made whatever was needed for themselves and the running of the manor. Now the lord was the ultimate authority on his land and ran his manor like a small government. That's important, as is the definition of manorialism, which is an economic system. And this is a very blurry, bad picture of a manor. And an even worse picture, but basically you can see you've got the manor, you have the village houses, right? You have the church. You might have some sort of like not a courtyard, but like oh my gosh, why is the word eluding me right now? A marketplace. There we go. So marketplace where people can sell their goods, clothes, materials, stuff like that. But basically this was like a self-sufficient little city. So check for understanding. Why did power in medieval Europe eventually shift to the local nobles after Charlemagne died? Well, the reason was the governments of Charlemagne's grandsons could not protect their people from the Vikings. So noble families stepped up. The feudal system is based on an exchange of land for loyalty and service, okay? It is not an exchange for money. Money is not involved. A knight swore loyalty to his lord. He lived by a Christian warrior's code of behavior, which called for courage, honor, and loyalty. This code is known as chivalry. The correct steps to becoming a knight are C. First, you become a page, then a squire, and lastly, a knight. Now, peasants on a manor worked the lands of their lord in return for protection from enemies and small strips of free land to work for themselves. Again, if I'm going too fast, guys, you can pause the video. Don't forget. By protecting and employing the local population, by collecting taxes and providing courts, the manor system functioned like a small government. In medieval Europe, the lowest class of a peasant was the serf, not a peon or a slave. And yes, that is a real word, peon, but no, we're not referring to the lowest class of peasants. They are a serf. This will also be a discussion question for student hours later this week. So why do you think medieval serfs stayed on their lord's manor instead of looking for better opportunities? Now, obviously, one of the big ones is in your slide we just went over, the fact that they were bound to the land, but I want you guys to think about other reasons why. Did feudalism solve the problems that confronted Europe because of the raids by the Vikings, the Muslims, and Magyars? Some things to think about. So, I will be posting the second video specifically on feudalism and manorialism tomorrow, Tuesday, April 7th, so keep an eye out for that. Your quiz this week will actually be due the following Tuesday, April 14th, simply because we're off school this Friday, April 10th, and next Monday, April 13th. So you have a couple extra days to get that quiz finished. It will be more than 5 questions this time. So I would recommend doing it before break, just so you don't have to worry about it and stress about it when we come back on Tuesday. But honestly, whatever is going to help you the most manage your time, go for it. All right, we're going to pause here, and I will talk to you guys later.